Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts, and here are your latest headlines. The Prime Minister will deliver a tough message on climate change at the G20 summit in Rome. Boris Johnson will say that countries causing the most global warming must be held accountable. The summit comes ahead of the COP26 Global Climate Conference in Glasgow, which starts on Monday. He'll urge leaders to follow through on their commitments to cut carbon emissions.
One thing we've got to achieve is to ensure that we keep alive the prospect of restricting the growth in the temperature of our planet to 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. That's what it's all about. If we can do that, then we stop the prospect of so much desertification. We stop the prospect of the huge geopolitical consequences of climate change.
The Prime Minister also gave an update on the Queen's health. After speaking with Her Majesty, Boris Johnson says she's in very good form and he wishes her well.
It's very important that she should follow her doctor's advice, but as you know, she's determined to be there at the cenotaph. I've no doubt that will happen. I think that we've just got to let her get on and rest. But as you know, she's very, very hard-working. She continues to be at her desk.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has told the European Commission President that French threats over fishing rights are unjustified and incompatible with the post-Brexit trade agreement. France is threatening to block British boats from its ports and tighten checks on vessels if the dispute isn't resolved by Tuesday. The Prime Minister is due to hold a short meeting with the French President Emmanuel Macron tomorrow. The Brexit Minister Lord Frost says the UK government is now actively considering launching dispute settlement proceedings. Prince Andrew has unequivocally denied accusations that he sexually abused Virginia Giuffre when she was 17. In a document filed to a district court in the US, the Duke of York's lawyers said the allegations are baseless and were an attempt to achieve another payday. Miss Giuffre claims that she was trafficked by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Royal correspondent Ingrid Seward told GB News it's good that the Duke is now addressing the claims.
In a nutshell, what Andrew's lawyers are saying is that, she's decided to pick Andrew because he's very high profile. They still insist that he is totally innocent. And it's a very strong case that they've put, but we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. But this is quite positive, and at last they've actually said something.
After walking thousands of miles, pilgrims from the UK and Europe have arrived at Glasgow ahead of the COP26 climate summit. Activists and members of Extinction Rebellion, along with artists and pilgrimage groups, joined each other for a procession in the city. The event is being described as an opening ceremony to a series of non-violent protests being planned in Glasgow. It's taken the world by storm in recent weeks, and now that Halloween has arrived in South Korea, it seems the majority ruled in favour of Squid Game costumes. Fans took to the streets of Seoul dressed as their favourite characters from Netflix dystopian show. That's it for now.
Well, I'm pleased to say that the GB News pub is now open. And joining me is Sir John Redwood, Conservative Member of Parliament for Wokingham. And, of course, somebody in the past who's been Secretary of State for Wales in the major government, challenger for the leadership of the Conservative Party, Eurosceptic to his fingertips. Sir John Redwood, welcome to Talking Pints. Very good to see you. The thing that amazes me, I look at your CV. You know, you worked at Fleming's, you worked at Rothschild, so you worked at, very successful city institutions. You've got a very acute mind for matters financial. You've been in Parliament since 1987, so you are, I called you a veteran. I hope that's okay.
Well, I'm still learning the job. Every day I hope to get better, Nigel.
Well, good for you.
And I did go on to run industrial companies, which I found very rewarding and very challenging.
Yeah, so a long career in business, long career in politics. You've held ministerial position. You were head of Mrs. Thatcher's policy unit, going way back to the days when the Conservatives were very concerned, and we will talk about that.
Yeah, I was a young man then, but she still took my advice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good for you.
You were as good as your last argument with Margaret. That was why she was a pleasure to work for.
Were you scared of her?
No, I wasn't scared of her at all. We had a very good working relationship. It was a different generation. But I worked out very, very early on that she was one of those rare politicians that you could speak truth to power as long as you did it privately and you were loyal around the back, which I always was. We had some really good arguments, and sometimes I persuaded her. It was a very interesting relationship.
Quite a feather in your cap, I would say. But how is it, John, how is it that somebody with all your breadth of experience in finance, in business, in politics, in policy, how is it that we have, frankly, we have had since 2019 some of the most inexperienced in terms of life and lowest grade cabinet ministers this country has ever seen, and you're languishing on the backbenches? How does this work?
Well, I don't think they're low grade, and
they are.
You need people of all ages and experiences, and how do you get experience?
People with no life experience. That's what I'm talking about.
You must ask the bosses that. Ask
Rich daddies.
Ask Mrs. May. Ask Boris. I don't know. I'm ready to serve, but I'm happy to serve in the way I do. It's a great privilege to represent a constituency and to have your voice in Parliament so that you can get hold of ministers and you can argue with them over what they should do next, and that's what I do.
And it's ridiculous that they're not using you, isn't it?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, Nigel. It's not for me to say. It's not about me. It's about the country, and it's about making use of this enormous trust.
A lot of people sitting
the country put a lot of trust in Boris and the Conservatives, and I think they were right to choose us, because I think every other party wanted to thwart Brexit and didn't understand the electorate were very serious about this, and certainly didn't understand the opportunities. People actually voted for something different. They voted for change. So I'm one of those voices saying, let's be bold, let's be imaginative, let's be sensible, but an independent country can achieve a lot more.
But I did notice over the weekend, the Labour Party appear to embrace Brexit because they're advocating scrapping the 5% VAT.
Yes, at last.
A
tax they weren't allowed to change while they were in it.
That's right.
And the greenest government ever still hasn't taken VAT off insulation and boiler controls and lots of green products. Now, why not? That was one of the things that you and I in the Brexit campaign said, this is a freedom we have. One of the things you want is people to buy more of these things. So why are we taxing them? Answer, because the EU made us. So let's do that, please, Rishi.
No, I get all of that. But how does it feel to be part of a Conservative Party that is now clearly tax and spend, that has gone for state controls, maybe not as bad as New Zealand or some other countries, that has gone for this green agenda in a way that really hits some of those on the lowest incomes and some of those running small businesses? John, it doesn't feel very Conservative, does it?
Now, I'm delighted when the Chancellor assures us all he's a lower tax Conservative. I say, bring it on, Rishi, bring it on.
It's like Boris calling himself a libertarian. It's not believable, any of it, is it?
And so let's see which taxes we could cut. Because if we cut some of the tax rates, we would actually collect more revenue. Every time a Conservative government has had the courage to cut income tax, the amount of money collected has gone up.
I completely understand that, and I do actively follow what you're pushing out there, and I find it very interesting. But they're not doing it. And my question to you is, this doesn't feel it doesn't feel conservative.
Well, that's why I live in hope, and I want to make sure more people agree with me, and if people do agree with me, write to your MP. And all my Conservative colleagues, a lot of my Conservative colleagues in private say, you know, John, we like lower taxes. Well, I'm saying you can have them, and it won't be irresponsible to have them. Did you know, for example, I don't read it on any of the normal media, that in the first 6 months of this year to September, the Treasury has collected in £46 billion more in tax revenue than its forecast last March.
Yeah, I know, phenomenal.
Because we've grown a bit faster than they thought we were going to. So doesn't that tell them something? It should tell the Chancellor that if you get faster growth, the money rolls in. You don't need to put the tax rates up, because that's all before they put up corporation tax and national insurance. My worry is that putting up national insurance, which I voted against, and putting up corporation tax is going to slow the growth, and you might even end up with less money than you would have got if you'd gone for growth. And I'm not satisfied, Nigel. All the time the economy is still smaller than it was just pre-pandemic. Now, of course, it had a big hit, and we understand why that happened. But I'm impatient to get us beyond where we were in February 2019. So go for growth is what you've got to do.
In a way, John, you've become a bit of a serial rebel, really, haven't you? I mean, you're there and you vote on things that you believe to be right. I don't know whether the party whips have given up with you now, but they must be getting...
Well, I don't want to be a serial rebel.
But you are.
And I give them the benefit of the doubt on lots of things.
But you are. But you are.
Because I do believe only the Conservative Party can see us out of this. When I see what Labour and the Liberal Democrats are offering, I think, my goodness, thank goodness.
Well, I'm not sure anyone can tell what the difference would be.
There's quite a bit of difference.
Well, there isn't very much.
They would
know it.
Labour would lock us up a lot more than this government's been doing.
You're being very loyal to your party here. It's perfectly clear you don't think Boris is particularly conservative, but he was elected for a purpose, and that was to end the agony that the country had been through for that nearly 4-year period, and it was absolutely awful. What was it in your career? I mean, 87 you get into Parliament, just the year before the Single European Act had been signed, and I remember I was working in the city at the time, and I had my qualms about it. I wasn't...
Well, I told Margaret Thatcher not to sign it. It was one of the rare occasions when she didn't like my advice, and she was under enormous pressure from the Foreign Office and many of the civil servants. So we had to sign this thing, and they told her it was a free market. I said, no, it's not a free market. It's a legislative grab. It's a power grab. And then I became single market minister later on, and I saw at close quarters just what a power grab it was, and how insensitive it was, particularly to small business. It was anti-innovation, it was anti-different ways of doing things. Everything had to be standardised, and it had to be standardised around what a few big corporations told the French and German governments they wanted. You know?
How did you vote in the 75 referendum?
Oh, I voted no, of course.
Did you? Okay.
Because I made the mistake of reading the Treaty of Rome.
Oh, gosh.
And I was hearing all these politicians, Labour were in government, of course, Labour and some Conservative politicians, telling me it was a free market. And I said, no, it wasn't just a free market. It was always ever closer union. Yeah. And although they hadn't fleshed out all the details, it was quite clear they were going to take us on a massive journey. And I always thought, this is not a journey I, and probably a majority of the British people, want to go on. And it's certainly not a journey we're going to go on if we're lied to about it. And the Labour government in 75 said, oh, no, it's just a free market and we won't lose any sovereignty. Well, of course we lost sovereignty.
Heath said the same thing.
Yeah, well,
Heath said the same thing.
Heath was honest.
Later he was honest.
Heath actually said that we were going to lose sovereignty, but Labour in government had the referendum to try and deal with a conflict within their own party, and the main establishment Labour people, who had to take on one or two of their own cabinet ministers, were saying no loss of sovereignty, and I never believed a word of it, because the Treaty of Rome was a journey to sacrifice. That
was the irony, wasn't it?
That was why I told Margaret not to sign the Single European Act, because it was a sacrifice of vetoes and powers. And I even tried to compromise with her, and I said, given that they say a limited number of laws are necessary for the single market, and we need to have majority voting for those, define which ones they are, and then we get our veto back thereafter. And they wouldn't even do that.
And then when she left, in pretty sad circumstances, pretty thankless circumstances, John Major's first speech. I remember it. First speech. And John Major, who we all thought was a Thatcherite, said we want to be at the heart of Europe. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. My heart's...
I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. You know, we were told this was the heir to Thatcher, and but clearly he wasn't. So in the end, it's the mid-1990s, and Major, and you know, there's a civil war going on. It's been going on through Maastricht, but it never goes away.
No.
Never goes away. It's a fault line, isn't it?
Well, a lot of us couldn't take Maastricht because it was a very clear sacrifice of much bigger powers than the single European Act sacrifice.
Well, that was it for me with the Conservative Party. I was done with it.
I couldn't believe that Conservative leaders or wannabe leaders would think sacrificing the pound was feasible.
I know.
Because I said to them, well, you must rule that out immediately. At least we got an opt-out from this thing. One good thing John Major did, which Labour wouldn't have done, was got an opt-out from the currency. But they wouldn't unequivocally say, we're never going to go into it. And I said, well, how can you still be anything like an independent country if you don't run your own currency? I mean, that to me was and then I took the show around the country with others to keep the pound.
No, I remember very well. And it was a good thing that a lot of people united. I mean, saving the pound was our Alamein, in a sense. It was a very important moment.
And I always said that if we'd lost that, I'd have left politics. I saw no point in carrying on if you belonged to a country that didn't control its own money. Couldn't see that, but we won it, so it was a great triumph, so it was worth staying on.
Taking you back a step.
Yeah.
So John Major is, you know, clearly joining ERM's been a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And that was really, I mean, you know, that was...
And there's so few of us ministers against it.
I literally, from that moment on, I've never voted Conservative since. I mean, I may do again one day, you never know, but I've never voted Conservative again. And I was a member of the party.
Yeah, sure.
You know, at the time. But in the end, Major says, put up or shut up.
Yeah.
And up pops John Redwood.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at Lord's. I was at Lord's. And I was
you remember where you were?
I do. I was at Lord's, looking forward to a proper day out, and I get this message that, you know, Redwood's standing.
Yeah.
And then this sort of slightly unfortunate photograph of your supporters, and I think Tony Marlow had a jacket on for Henley because it was in June or whatever.
Well, they decided to make fun of that, but they were all Conservative MPs.
Yeah, I know.
I had a simple choice. We invited any Conservative MP who wanted to come. I then turned up. I couldn't start my campaign by saying I don't like the look of these people. it all looked... That would have been even worse.
I know. It all just looked... and I spoke to Tony Marlow about it.
Well, there's Tony Marlow and Theresa Gorman who attracted quite a lot of attention.
Yeah,
but I was very grateful they at least had the courage to put up, you know?
I mean, they were great people.
They were great. They had guts.
I know. But it was all painted out. It all looked a bit like...
Well, if it hadn't been that, it'd been something else.
But
the major lot were very good at spinning against me.
But then you see, John, I then went through the same thing.
Yep.
That, you know, I was a clown.
Yep.
UKIP was a circus.
That's right.
Fruitcakes, loonies, closet races. I've been through it as well.
Yeah.
When you look back at that period, are you pleased that you stood against him?
Oh, yes. Because I'll tell you why. Because I think it achieved something. And I think it persuaded John Major he had to offer a referendum before sacrificing the pound. Now, I didn't actually think that mattered at all because I knew he was going to lose big time. But it made Blair match him. And I think that was terribly... That's how I would defend what I did. Didn't get me anywhere, but it wasn't really about ambition. It was really about saving the pound. That was what the point of it was.
No.
And I was thrilled that both major parties, including the one who was bound to win the general election, given what Tories were doing, said they were going to have a referendum. And I think that was absolutely critical and healthy.
Yeah. Economics, John. Quickly, are we headed for a period of stagflation? And we've discussed stagflation with the audience over the last few weeks. It doesn't look pretty, does it?
Well, we're certainly heading for a period of slower growth rates after the phenomenal growth rates of recovery, and we're in a temporary period of higher inflation. But I think we need to take actions, and I've been setting out some of those: lower taxes, dealing with supply-side problems, investment in the areas where we need more capacity to avoid stagflation. And I'm terribly keen that we invest a lot more in energy, because this is a country that was always rich in energy and produced all its own electrical power and had plenty of oil and gas and coal which are allowed to
do nuclear?
Well, maybe, but I mean, nuclear takes a long time and is quite expensive. I think we need to get more gas out.
Yes.
And there are various ways of producing more gas. I mean, the immediate challenge is why not accept the Shell investment in the Jackdaw field, which would link into the Shearwater platform that's already there. I mean, the kit's already there. The pipes go past the door. Why is it better to import gas in an LNG carrier?
I know, Boris wants to import it. I mean, you couldn't invent some of this stuff.
It's not that I'm being anti-green. We are going to burn the gas anyway. We're not suddenly going to rip out all these gas plants. So why not burn our own gas? And we've only got half at the moment that comes from ourselves. And on electrical power, I don't really mind how they generate it, but it can't all be wind, because we just saw in September that when the wind doesn't blow, we go from 35% wind to 2% wind, and we got a problem. So we need a range of things, whether it's biomass or nuclear or new gas or whatever.
It was down to 4%, wasn't it?
It was under 2 at one point.
Well, that's what I thought. But I thought. But viewers complained I'd got it wrong. But if you think it was 2, thank you.
Well, I watch from time to time the real terms thing, which they show how much are we burning.
John, what next?
What next? Well, I mean, this is a great country, and it's really a training programme to government to show how an independent nation has lots of exciting options when you're a great country like Britain, and how we've got to learn again the decent habits of how to make our own decisions, set our own taxes.
You are genuinely excited by Brexit, aren't you?
It's fantastic, but we need to use it, and we haven't used many of the things yet. But in defence of Boris, he's done Brexit apart from Northern Ireland, which we've still got to sort out, and he did the vaccines, and that was brilliant. They did something different. I'm not sure the conventional system would have developed the vaccine. So we know we can do it now. So I say take confidence. And if you can do it for vaccines, let's do it for a new energy policy or whatever it is that we now need to do to be a more prosperous country. And if you want to level up, it's about having a great private sector. It's not just about a bit of public investment, though that can help. And it's about getting everybody on those personal journeys. So we need to make the opportunities available. I think it's got to be a much better environment for small businesses and for self-employment. And I think they need to look at the tax and regulations on that. So it's got to be easier for people to work for themselves.
I agree. That was John Redwood on Talking Pints. The most enthusiastic I've ever seen him. Phenomenal.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
It's my favourite time of the day. The GB News pub is open. It's great. And joining me for Talking Pints tonight is former editor of The Sun newspaper, Kelvin MacKenzie. Extraordinary Big Dipper, ups and downs, a long career in media with some very big highs and some lows.
Shocking lows.
I mean, riding high in April, shot down in May. But I understand you're going to put all of this in a book.
I am. For next May.
Yep.
100,000 words.
Yep.
In which I emerge poorly. Rupert emerges wealthy, but with question marks, and some of his colleagues get some question marks as well. But so I expect it'll all end up in the High Court, which will be fantastic.
When you were running The Sun and you were the editor from 81 to 94.
Yep.
So a long time. Mm-hmm. In what was then a very big selling newspaper. What was it selling at its peak?
4.4, 4.5, massive.
Million.
Very, very influential. No internet, no social media.
No social media, which younger viewers won't believe. But I mean, the newspapers were really powerful, weren't they?
In a way, the editor didn't know it because it was a desk job. You come in at 9 in the morning, you go at 9 at night. You had no sense of what effect you might be having, for instance, in politics. The one person who did understand this was Rupert Murdoch. The Sun was enormously successful commercially. Selling a lot of papers meant selling a lot of advertising. Mm-hmm. But he also enjoyed the kind of aspect of the power of, for instance, being helpful to Margaret Thatcher or to anybody else.
You were a paper, a red top, page 3, all the rest of it, with a big working class readership.
Massive working class. Yeah.
Encouraging them to vote for a radical Conservative party led by Margaret Thatcher. And I think it was, was it in 1992 when you put the headline up, it's the Sun what won it?
Yep.
Do you believe that?
Well, a bit of breast beating never hurt anybody, does it? I wouldn't have liked to have written it's the Sun what lost it. I'm not sure, really. Kinnock really lost it. I mean, he was absolutely hopeless, that guy. He was Jeremy Corbyn without the hair. He was a disaster. I mean,
let's have a look at this. This was your front page the day of the election in 1992. If Kinnock wins today, will the last person to leave Britain please turn out the lights? I mean, I've got to tell you, in terms of humour, that's a hell of a front page.
And I'll accept the compliment.
It's no, I mean, look, you were good at it. I mean, some of it was very controversial. Gotcha, after the Belgrano sunk, was very controversial. Mm-hmm. I think you withdrew it from later editions, didn't you? Or is that not true?
Yeah, no, I did. But actually, that was a mistake. I mean, the reality of this was war. And they were going to attack us. We attacked them. And it was right that we sank their ship, because if we hadn't sunk their ship, they definitely would have sunk ours. And in fact, as we know, they killed many of our people on Sheffield and other destroyers.
And Kelvin, as a boss, I mean, I don't think you'd last very long these days with modern HR. You were a complete tyrant.
Yes, that was the enjoyable aspect of the job.
What, being a tyrant?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, as you well know, absolute power is absolutely delicious, isn't it? So, yes, I totally agree. If I did any of that, I'd be the one that would be let go, not any of the staff. And it was quite wrong, but actually I quite enjoyed it, to be honest.
Do they still speak to you?
Yes, unfortunately they do. They keep in touch and asking whether the cheque is still heading their way. The reality of it was that you thought you were doing the right thing by chastising them or praising them or doing whatever. None of that is possible now. The best thing that can happen, unfortunately, is actually not to talk to your staff. So when I went into commercial life, I decided that I would be in employment tribunals all day long if I ever talked to anybody. So the idea was I just used to shout at the finance director. And he seemed to enjoy that, and that made me feel better. But at least we weren't going to get ourselves in a lot of trouble.
So you put a layer in the middle, really?
Absolutely. And that is what happens everywhere now. Nobody is going around saying, why did we do that? That just cost us 10 grand, or that cost us that contract in Malaysia. Why did that happen? Are you an idiot or what? All that has gone. And that may be a good thing, but it has disappeared. But one of the aspects of it that's happened is that you end up now in the publishing business where you can't, where if some I'll just say a lady for the sake of argument, had just come out of Oxford, and she said, I don't think we should be publishing that book about Nigel Farage, or I don't think we should be publishing that book about Kelvin MacKenzie. Some quivering chief executive, right, said, you're quite right, we won't publish it. Rather than saying, look, I'm not interested in your views, I couldn't care less whether you work for us or not, let me make
It's the corporates, isn't it? It's the corporates. The woke, the real minority, send 25,000 emails to a marketing department. They go, oh my God, everybody hates us.
Well, GBNews has suffered some of it, hasn't it?
In the early days, I think we are getting back.
It's when you dumped Andrew Neil, everything started turning out all right, didn't it? Suddenly the media buyers all came rushing in saying, well, you got rid of Andrew, we must remember to take some advertising.
I can't claim responsibility for that one, Kelvin. I wasn't involved. I'm a mere presenter here, but enjoying it, I have to say. And it's a new media venture, and that is an exciting thing.
It is, yeah.
To be part of.
And tough at the beginning.
And, of course, inevitably tough. If the high was 92, and I guess that was the height of really what you did as editor and your power and that front page that all of us that were alive at the time will never forget. The big low. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking it was Liverpool, but would that be right?
No, that would be right.
I have attracted a fair degree of opprobrium over the last few years. I was a devil incarnate. I dared take on the establishment on what was a settled view, and so necessarily you're mad and bad for doing that. But I've never sort of quite. I think the mayor of Liverpool, Joe Anderson, the one that in the end had to stand down, he did say.
Why did he have to stand down?
Well, I think there was all sorts going on. Yes. But I'm not sure we can say so at this moment in time. He once said that Nigel Farage wasn't welcome in Liverpool, but that was just him. And I'm sure if I turned up there today, in a bar tonight in Liverpool, I might do okay. But you're kind of still 30 years on. You are the ultimate pariah in Liverpool. Just tell us what actually. I mean, basically, the Hillsborough tragedy. For those that don't know this story, the Hillsborough tragedy, the victims, they felt or were made to feel that you'd insulted them.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I've explained this till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah, well, let's hear it.
They don't want to listen. So all that happened was there was a piece of agency copy from, some freelancers in Sheffield, very well known. They come up with a story which said that senior officers blamed the Liverpool fans for Hillsborough. OK. Why wouldn't I believe that? When our political editor, walking down Whitehall that afternoon, bumps into the private secretary to Margaret Thatcher, who tells exactly the same story to Trevor Kavanagh, the political editor.
Sort of corroboration.
Yeah, corroborated it. Why wouldn't I believe that? Why wouldn't I believe it? And by the way, I wasn't the only one to run. The Liverpool papers ran the story as well.
So the story was a crowd surge caused by people who didn't actually have tickets.
There was a bit of that, and there was kind of other allegations that were made. They were horrible allegations, OK? But this was coming from senior police officers. It wasn't the Sun having sent out some investigative reporters. It wasn't even our reporters. So why wouldn't I believe it? If it had been about Jimmy Savile, senior police officers had said X, Y and Z about Jimmy Savile, I would have believed that as well. And so the Liverpool fans, as it turned out, the whole story was completely made up by the cops. And it was made up by the cops in order to actually deflect the mistakes that they had made, or perhaps one officer had made, or a series of officers had made, right, to deflect what they had done. However, Liverpool fans still waiting for somebody, so 97 are now dead, are still waiting for somebody to be charged and found guilty. And so there is nobody to blame, so they might as well blame the editor of The Sun. And
it stuck.
And it stuck, and it's still there today, and it will still be there. For instance, I get from Liverpool fans saying that they are going to have a bigger party than when Margaret Thatcher died when I die. That is one of their favourite. That's their favourite. It's a disgrace. But some of the stuff, threatening, we're going to murder you, we're going to stab you, we're going to do this.
Do you still get that?
Oh, yeah, I still get that. So it is quite shocking, the level of abuse. And so one of the reasons why I'm pleased with the online harms bill is because, with a bit of luck, this will now stop. I'd like it to stop tomorrow. Do I think it's going to stop? No, I don't. It's something I'll just have to live with.
Whether it's because you've made a mistake, or whether it's because you were misled, or even whether it's because you had a misjudgment, to still be paying a price for it 30 years on is pretty tough.
Well, I don't accept that it was a misjudgment.
No,
I don't accept it was a mistake.
I said it could be, but, you know.
Yeah, it's for the other side to say that, but I don't accept that.
After that, you continued, you did remarkable things. I mean, where we first came in touch, you were running TalkSport Radio. You took it to remarkable places. And I'm grateful to you because you gave me my sort of first real chances as a young MEP. And I'd go on with James Whale and all sorts of people. And you know, I am grateful you've given me a chance to get out there and do that stuff. And that was a huge success. TalkSport was a huge success. And you've had all sorts of commercial ups and downs, and that's the way that life in the commercial world is. But you were back writing columns.
Yep. I was
back writing columns.
Yep.
Back doing what Kelvin does best. And what Kelvin does best, I think, is he's quite good at assessing where the public are on stuff. Quite good at assessing whether it's Middle England or whatever it is. And probably 7 or 8 times out of 10, Kelvin gets it right. Twice out of 10, hopeless. But generally, you're good at getting it right.
But remember, I'm not trying to get it right. I'm just saying what I think.
Yeah, but what you think has the reason that you did well at The Sun, you struck that chord. But suddenly, after all these years...
I get fired.
At 70...
Yeah, fired.
Sacked at 70.
As I said to Rebecca Brooks, said, this is a fantastic day. She said, oh, yes, in what way is that? I said, well, anybody can get fired at 40 or 50. I said, sacked at 70. That really is.
Has Rupert gone woke? Because, I tell you what's amazing.
Yeah.
Yesterday's Sun newspaper.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you looked at it. It was
Not if I'm looking for stories, I don't.
Wall to wall, backing Boris, backing the aims of COP26. Yeah. Prince Charles is writing in the Sun.
Yeah.
I mean, here he is. Look, here's Prince Charles in yesterday's Sun, and he suddenly now appears to be the sort of Sun's green ambassador.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting to have the world a better, cleaner, safer place, but there are pretty serious questions about wind energy and the sheer cost of these ludicrous heat pumps that Boris and the Prince want us to have. I mean, as I say, you got cancelled.
Yeah.
And
well, actually, I got more than cancelled. I got fired.
Yeah. Well, it amounts to more or less the same thing. Don't worry, it's happened to me. It happens to many people.
Well, it may be happening to you after the show.
Well, maybe having you on could do it. I don't know. But no. Kelvin, where are we? I mean, free speech is free speech. It should never incite hatred or violence, and we all understand that. But free speech is, I can say what the hell I think about you. You can say what the hell you think about me. And if we meet in a week's time, I might have a drink with you. Because that's what we do as free human beings. But right through the education system, all the way through, we're suddenly being told, not that I disagree with your point of view, but I respect your right as a human being to have. I think you're an idiot, but I respect your right. We're now saying, no, that person should be stopped from speaking. Are we going to be able to turn this around? Where do we go with all of this in the future?
The answer's no to that.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm afraid the tide is gone out on that argument. And if you take a paper like The Sun, made up of some pretty good people, what they've decided is, and I don't blame Murdoch for this at all. The Sun loses money. When I was there, we were making a fortune. There wasn't any competition.
Did you make a fortune?
Did I make a fortune at The Sun? No, I didn't. No.
Why not?
I was very. Rupert had a kind of parsimonious attitude towards pay, and what he understood was that the job was so good he didn't have to pay anybody to do it. Is the truth.
And you love doing it anyway.
And I like doing it anyway. Yeah, I like doing it anyway. After 23 hours out of the day, you felt a bit tired, but after that, you were fine. And so money was not the driving force, but the Sun now loses money. Therefore, he doesn't want to have a problem with something that's losing money. In New York, he's got Fox News. It's in trouble morning, noon and night. They don't give a stuff. By the way, the thing's making $1.5 billion a year. He will take as much trouble as he likes. So Rupert very cleverly has decided, telling his management, I don't want a problem when I wake up in the morning.
Right. So turning this around is going to be tough, yeah?
I tell you, it's impossible.
That's very pessimistic.
I know. But you see, if you get something like, I don't know, GBNews, and if Ofcom continues to have a more relaxed attitude towards free speech, the ability... they had a choice on Meghan Markle. And actually, what they did was they doubled Piers' money. Because it must be when I get slung out, nobody wants to know me. When Piers gets slung out, he gets 50 million quid for 3 years' money. How did that happen?
I don't know. Kelvin, finally, has it all been worth it?
It has been worth it, and it will continue to be worth it.
There you
not
go.
The end of
there
it.
You go. Not the end of MacKenzie. Gosh, you have all been warned. That was Kelvin MacKenzie on Talking Pints.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
And yes, we've ordered a couple of beers. They were threepence cheaper than they were this morning, which can't be bad. And joining me for this episode of Talking Pints is Conservative Member of Parliament for Shipley, Philip Davies. Philip, welcome to
Cheers.
the GB News pub. Very nice
Cheers, you too.
to see you. So you were there today in a packed House of Commons?
I wasn't actually in the House of Commons.
Weren't you?
I was watching it on the TV in my office. It's much more civilised than...
Right. Are there enough seats in that place?
No, there aren't. I mean, there's, 400 seats, I think. There's 650 MPs, so...
Right, yeah.
So it's better watching it in the office.
What did you think of it?
Look, he's got a difficult task. He hasn't really got much room to play with. It's, the lockdown's, been terrible for lots of reasons, but, obviously for the nation's finances. I don't really think any self-respecting Conservative can be happy with a budget that's put up taxes so much.
Let's face it, on most issues now, your cabinet are more like Labour were a few years ago than they are Conservatives.
Well, they might be a bit more like Labour were a few years ago, but they're certainly not much like Labour are today.
What are Labour like today?
Well, I mean, but I think there's no doubt the centre of gravity of British politics has moved to the left over the last 20 years or so on most issues.
No, it really has. It really, really has. Now, you're a serial rebel. You vote against the government on virtually everything.
It's not quite true, but anyway.
Well, I have a look at this. Quite a long list, you know. So clearly not aiming for ministerial office, because that's not going to happen. And, of course, you're married to Esther McVeigh, who knows what she believes in.
Don't I know it?
Sure you do. What are you in politics for? Because you're in Parliament, you represent your constituency, and I get that bit, and that's an honour to do it. There's no question about that. But you're in a party that you're increasingly at odds with on some very, very major issues. What is Philip Davies trying, apart from having a jolly good time and upsetting everybody, what are you trying to do?
Well, look, you're absolutely right. I mean, I always say the one thing that me and Conservative Prime Ministers agree about is that I should never be promoted. And I don't want to be promoted. I said in my maiden speech...
It's not going to happen.
I said in my maiden speech I would never accept a promotion if I was ever offered one. But what I like doing in Parliament particularly, apart from representing the fantastic people of the Shipley constituency, is I like speaking up and saying things that I think lots of people in the country think, but hardly anybody in Parliament will ever say. And I think that actually one of the big problems with Parliament and you know, is that actually on most issues the majority opinion in the country is not the majority opinion in Parliament. In fact, often that opinion is never even heard in Parliament. And so I like speaking up for things, unfashionable causes you might call them, things that I think people in the country think, but politicians for whatever reason don't like saying. And I think sometimes that, you know, if I feel I'm saying something and nobody else in there would have said that, then I feel that my position in Parliament is worthwhile. And so that's really what I like doing.
No, fair enough. And I mean, if you think about it, you know, the whole European debate, you know, and I got going on this, well, in '93, I sort of really committed I can't believe it, really, but you know, I started standing in by-elections and doing all sorts of things and trying to raise the issue. And I did that because I felt like you, that just Parliament was out of touch on this issue. There was a lack of real knowledge in the country. And I'm just pondering, Philip, over this chat in the GBNews pub. You know, we could have had this conversation about Europe 20 years ago. We could have said there's basically not a single MP that wants to leave, and yet a lot of people a lot of people in this pub think we were better off out. And in the end, we got there, and what a hell of a victory it was. I mean, it wasn't easy, but we got there. But I'll tell you something. On global warming, firstly, there's actually more scepticism about the science, I think, than people realise. A lot of people say, well, hang on, you know, what about volcanoes? What about sunspot activity? I mean, there's nobody saying, by the way, that 7.5 billion people on this planet's a good thing, in the sense that, you know, it must be doing something. So the scepticism around the science, I wouldn't say it's huge scepticism, because certainly anybody under the age of 35 has been indoctrinated, you know, without any sense of balance, and the same on the BBC and elsewhere. But where there's real scepticism is on wind energy. Where there's increasing anger is people realising over these last 10 or 15 years the amount of surcharge they've paid on their bills to pay to people like David Cameron's father-in-law, who owns land in North Lincolnshire and has got wind turbines on them, to pay big offshore wind companies. So there's a real, I guess the higher bills go, the more they say, hang on, we've been ripped off for years on this. And now they're telling me that I've got to, in my Edwardian semi, you know, install a heat pump, and it's probably going to cost 25 grand to get all the different building works done. And when the temperature drops below 5 degrees, it isn't going to work anyway. So I sense on this issue something's going on. And I know you spoke out about COP26 in the last couple of days. Just tell us what you said.
Well, look, my view is I'm not even arguing about the science, and there's people better qualified than me to talk about what's happening. And you know, is the climate changing? Well, of course the climate's changing. The climate's always changed, and it always will do. So people say, you know, the climate deniers and all this stuff. Absolutely not. I'm perfectly happy to accept the climate is changing, and that those changes will cause some difficulties in different places around the world. I'm fully accepting of that. My point is that I even find saying it quite strange because it's so ludicrous that the political class have decided that the solution to this problem is that we're all going to get together around the world and we're collectively going to change the world's climate. Now, that to me is as ridiculous as it sounds saying it.
Oh, come on, Philip. You know that if Boris gets the right agreement in Glasgow over the next couple of weeks, temperature rises will be kept to exactly 1.5 degrees centigrade. I mean, it must be right, mustn't it?
Yeah,
I know, it's nonsense.
It's unbelievable. And so my point is that we're literally on the verge of committing to spend £1.4 trillion in this country that we don't have, by the way, whilst also at the same time piling on costs onto consumers who are struggling already with the cost of living. And we're going to do all that in order to get our carbon emissions down from where they are currently, which is less than 1% of global carbon emissions, to net zero. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, China, India, emerging economies in Africa, their increase in carbon emissions each year, their increase is going to be more than our total. And so we're going to be pursuing a policy that we can't afford, which is absolutely futile.
Yeah.
Because of the actions of the other countries around the world. And people say, well, of course, if we do this, other countries will follow suit.
No, other countries will take advantage of it.
Well,
because we're handing them heavy manufacturing, we're handing them heavy engineering, we're handing China massive strategic advantage. I mean, I'm completely with you on this. But when you call your leader, your party leader and Prime Minister, when you say that his environmental push is utterly futile, virtue signalling, does he ever speak to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does he?
Yeah.
What does he say?
Well,
It is before the watershed, so be careful.
Look, I get on very well with Boris. He's got lots of qualities. On this issue, he feels very strongly about it. I don't doubt his sincerity about the issue, but we just fundamentally disagree about the common sense of it. That's basically it. He thinks that this is really important. And to be honest, the majority of people in Parliament agree with that. I'm in a very, very small minority of MPs who think it's absolutely crazy to go down this route. The point I keep making is that, when people say, well, if we do this, other countries will follow suit. This is the same argument that CND used in the 1980s about unilateral nuclear disarmament. If we do it, everyone else will follow suit. It was absolute madness then, and this environmental version of it is madness now. And these countries are not following us; they're laughing at us, frankly. And China has been building a coal-fired power station every week. They've committed to build...
I think more than that, actually.
Well, they're committed to building 100 new airports over the next decade, and we're still in this view that if we just get ourselves to net zero and bankrupt ourselves in the process, we'll have sorted out the world's climate.
But how do we get change, Philip? Because we have a first-past-the-post system, which means in England, which is 86% of the population, it's Labour or Conservative. There's the odd scattering of Liberal, but there's no way of changing that. It can't be broken. We don't have referendums very often on issues. I mean, the Daily Telegraph have been sort of floating this idea of what about a referendum on net zero? And I looked at it a couple of weeks ago and thought, I'm not sure. The poll overnight's remarkable. Quite remarkable.
It is, yeah.
Remarkable that a majority really want to have a proper open public debate about what we're doing in the name of climate change. Do you think there's an argument that we become a little bit more like Switzerland and we have the ability to have referendums on key issues? Now, that would devalue, in some ways, the role of Parliament, but how else getting things changed in this country is very hard, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, there's clearly an argument for it, and it works very well in Switzerland. Look, I'm a Conservative for many reasons, and one of those is that, I like our institutions and the way we do things. I don't want to go down the route of having a referendum on things like this. I think it should just be for really important constitutional issues. I don't think we should go down that route. But the reason why I think the poll is...
You say that, but if we do that, it ain't going to change.
Well, we'll see. I think the reason why the polling is so keen on a referendum is it's one of the failings of Parliament, because Parliament is not reflecting the views of the public at large. And I've always believed that for a parliamentary democracy to work, everybody in the country's got to feel that at least somebody's speaking up for them. And too often, they don't see that. And so I think that, we've got to do better in Parliament at making sure that everybody feels represented. But I do think things can change on this as well. And look, you're the expert in this. You got the biggest change of all, largely due to your...
By getting millions to rebel.
Yes, and you played the biggest part of all in bringing about that change. There were some of us who were little foot soldiers that had played a little part, but you were, you know this better than anybody. I trust in the great sense of the British public. I think they're always miles ahead of politicians on virtually every issue.
No, I agree.
And on this issue, I think there will be, it hasn't come yet, but there will be a massive backlash. When the real cost of this is discovered and people start to realise what's being expected of them, what freedoms they're having taken away from them, what additional costs are being forced on them, I think there will be a backlash of all backlashes. And to be perfectly honest, I suspect that many MPs and political parties, when that happens, will want to be part of that backlash.
We'll get the U-turn happening. And,
I do genuinely.
You may be right. I had a guest on earlier making the same point. What is it, Philip, with you and betting? You're one of the few MPs that speaks up in favour of gambling companies. You earn income from a global betting company. Surely, betting's bad, isn't it?
Well, look, my mum was a bookmaker when I was growing up in Doncaster. She had her own betting shop. And, I'm certainly not going to trash my heritage and everything that in my background. And, look, of course, some people have a problem with gambling. And we should do everything we possibly can to stop that from happening. And when people do develop a problem, to help them get over that problem. Of course we should. But equally, people have a problem with alcohol. And alcoholism, any kind of addiction is bad. The question is, do we really want to ban everybody from doing something simply because a few people have a problem? And I don't believe in a free country that should be the right attitude. What we should do is identify those people who have an addiction and have a problem and give them all the support and help that we need, whilst allowing those people who pursue their activities without any problem at all to continue doing so. Look, I'm as critical of betting companies for lots of things that they do. There's the...
Do you bet?
Yeah, I do. I love having a bet.
So do I.
Particularly on the horse. And, one of the issues I have with betting firms is that they often restrict the stakes of people who make money. And I think, that's, they can't have it both ways. They can't say, look, we don't want to restrict the stakes of people who lose, but we do want to restrict the stakes of people who win. So I can be as critical as the next person of betting companies. But I think overall, if you believe in freedom, then you've got to believe that people should have the freedom to pursue their activity whilst helping those who have a problem.
You are, without doubt, the least PC member of the current Parliament. And that's a good thing. I'm very happy that you are, and we need voices out there that are genuinely independent in their thought, and that's why I'd like to see electoral reform. I think we'd see more of those, but that's a story for another day. So what does Philip Davies now do? Because you've been in that Parliament now for 16 years. I did 21 years in Strasbourg, and that was way enough for me. But then everybody hated me there. Only half of Westminster hates you.
Might be more than that.
What next?
Well, I'm going to keep speaking up for my constituents on these issues, particularly where I think that the rest of the political class are not speaking about the issues that the people out in the country are. And that's what I've always tried to do in Parliament, and that's what I'll always continue to do. And I might be an unfashionable cause, I might be unpopular for doing it, but, it's no point being in Parliament unless you're prepared to speak up for what you believe in. If you're not prepared to do that, what on earth's the point in being there?
That was Philip Davies on Talking Pints. Quite refreshing in a way.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me live from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Your weekend starts here. My show exists to do three things: to inform, to debate and to entertain. Big guests, big stories and big opinions. And I can't do any of it without you. It's lively and it's a little bit funny. So join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday on GBNews.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.